Hey everyone, it's Joe Vines here outside of Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, and Jackie here from Copenhagen, Denmark.
And I was going through my email trying to do something, and I happened to see something. What we're going to share here. The data is a couple years old. It was a study conducted amongst RPA like experts, and there were, if I remember right, around 226 people. And let me go ahead and share my screen. And I think it's important to point out here at the beginning that there were no company, all the employees that answered the survey, none of them worked at 9 or less, had less than 9 or less employees, and so 20% had the 10 to 100, which isn't terrible, but that's not terrible to have 1 in 5 at between 10 to 100, but that means 80% were at least 100 employees or more, and those are to get to have 100 employees, that's a pretty good sized company.
Yeah, it is. It is actually.
So those of you, my gut is a lot of people that watch our podcasts and work with AutoHotkey, on average, I know a lot work at large companies. I did. Jackie, you work at a pretty good sized company, right?
Yeah. We're 1,000 plus. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But I think there are a lot of one-offs, right, where people are doing their own thing and they're trying their best to work hard. And you know what? AutoHotkey qualifies as RPA. So good for you that you're out there, automating what you're doing. The next graph was what I found interesting, and I thought we could just discuss it, was they were asked to select their top 3 most important benefits of RPA. And so I found it really interesting that the reduction of manual errors was the most often selected, above anything else. And faster service, improved data quality, which improved data quality goes to me hand in hand with the reduced manual errors.
Yeah, it would.
In the improved business results, that's a weird one to me, because I think that's an outcome instead of something I would say is, I guess it fits in there. It's just highly correlated to everything, right? That's why you're doing it. This reduced costs and reliance on IT systems integration, that I found really interesting. And perhaps, Jackie, what do you think? I think that's kind of a function at a lot of the larger companies. Hey, you're larger, so therefore often you've been around for quite a few years, and you have some archaic systems, and you need to find a solution that will help you work those things.
Yeah. What I catch in this sentence or question is the last part, integrations. Mm-hmm. Right? It's for my company, we would probably have the budget to go out and pay for a big integration between legacy programs, but if you can actually reduce or remove the reliance on actual hiring a full-on software company to build that type of integration, I get why you would try to do that.
Yeah, good point. And that's one of the things which Jackie and I both, because Jackie has actually, he knows at his company they're implementing one of the top 3 RPA tools, and I'll say this, Jackie, so you won't get in trouble, because I don't know what I'm talking about, right? You could have been there and been like, well, the stuff we're doing I could have done with AutoHotkey for free, right? Or and a little bit of programming, but we're still paying them a lot of money. So anyway, with AutoHotkey, it really is great. When I was at TI, we had systems that were so old, they didn't have APIs. We had to use 2 browser windows and have manually copy and pasting stuff. And so with web scraping, I automated transferring stuff from one to the other one. And that saved, a fortune in time. But, my point was, you're right, Jackie, we could have talked to our IT department. They probably could have shopped it out and said, for $50,000, we can make a tool that will do this for us, right? Or I can do something in 8 hours and have, 80, 95% of it somewhere in there, automated, and I still review it, right? And yet it's done in a couple of days instead of 6 months or something.
Yeah.
The reduced wage costs, that's very interesting to me. So that's not necessarily a big importance to the people that have been implementing this, or at least responded to the survey, which is to me fascinating. I would have thought that would have been higher on there, but again, I guess it depends. I got the feeling people taking the survey, because I did see nearly 50% were from the IT group that took the survey. So maybe they were talking to more of the people implementing RPA, not making decisions around bringing it in. Because I got to think, if we were asking the top management, this reduced wage cost might have been higher up in the list for those guys.
Yeah, reduced wage cost, yeah, probably also is one of RPA's pain points. It's like, yeah, it might be an effect of it, but it's not what companies usually like to push
Right.
as a big benefit, right? It's like we don't want to say we are doing this to lay off people, right? But that is the effect of that exact line: reduce wage cost. That is hiring less people, having fewer people actually working on specific problems.
Well, one could also argue it allows you to hire a cheaper person, right, for the same amount of hours. But I agree with what you said. That's the vast majority are using it as hiring fewer people overall. The next one is interesting: reduced employee churn. I think that is a product of it, right? People end up doing better things, and so also they can actually get paid more, right? Because you're not doing the mundane things and you're using your brain more. What I am surprised is they don't talk about I forget where I was going with that. With the I guess it's the reduction in error in the speed and reliability. No, man, I had a point. Sorry.
You had a point, but yeah, I don't know with reduced employee churn, which is that they get tired of doing the same thing, or is that how that is supposed to be?
Yeah, my point. Sorry, I remember my point was and I kind of made it the last one. I think that's why I forgot it was. You're able to shift people to doing, so they're allow them to do more interesting, advanced stuff, right? So I think the byproduct is you reduce employee churn, right? People don't quit because they're not bored. Like actually the job at TI, when I got hired, my job was a grind, and it just would eat people up. Every year to year and a half, people would quit or move out of the job because it was just a beatdown. And so I was hired specifically to automate as much of it as I could. And so by allowing people to, be happier in what they're doing and more productive, right, they actually are less likely to leave. Yet that's not what's listed here, right? That was my point, was I would think it's more about getting people more engaged and being more doing a higher level of advanced work, right, instead of focusing on the employee churn.
Yeah.
So increased, this is an interesting one, increased scope for data collection. Now, to me, I'm kind of interpreting it this way, Jackie, is that when humans are doing something, we're really busy. And I know from talking to you at your work, right, that when you do a certain thing, you're supposed to do 8 other steps along the way. That's what they're instructed to do. And yet people are busy, or for whatever reason, they don't do it, right? So when you have a computer doing it, you can start logging all this other data, and capturing information that you never could get a human to do. Do you think that's what they meant by that?
Yeah, that's also kind of how I'm interpreting it. If I were to answer this, increased scope of data collection, and instead of saying let's just take the 12 main ones because it takes 10 minutes to go in and get it for each one. So doing 12 should be enough. But if the computer is just doing it overnight, why not have it get all 30?
Right.
So we will increase the scope of how much data we actually get. So that's how I'm taking that one.
Yeah. I think to me the next two are highly related: reduced fraud and reduced human contact with sensitive data. I know they're not identical, but to me they're highly correlated, right? You don't need to have people in doing stuff, having access to data they don't need access to. If you can have a computer doing it, as long as the programmer setting it up isn't cheating you, you're golden.
Oh, I'd say with reduced fraud, I was unsure when I read it, just how would you do that? But sure enough, I get that if you can increase the scope of your data collection, you can use that to reduce the chance of people trying to fraud you. But other than that, I think that someone like Tank, who worked in the correct sector, would more have a better insight on how you would reduce fraud by collecting more data with an RPA process like this.
Actually, my thought was to Tank also when he was working at a bank. And I know he had said he saved them millions of dollars because he was able to automate going over, if I remember right, there was something with anything over, let's say $20,000. If it was below $20,000, that bank would just write it off, and it wasn't cost efficient to have an employee go and look at it. And so he automated with AutoHotkey some scripts that allowed them to get down to like $200 or something. It was a much lower level, and found, a lot of cases of fraud or just where, mistakes that had happened. So I don't think it was all fraud, but a part of it was fraud. But yeah, it was really interesting. Jeff, sorry, do you have something?
No, it's just in other aspects, but yeah, fraud can be a lot of things. So
right.
Sure.
The very last one, brand enhancement, that struck me as interesting. I'm glad they threw it in there, right? Because it's easy to argue if we didn't put it in there, maybe it would have been a lot higher, but we didn't know that. Now, I think this is one, people that worked at the IT companies, in the IT sector, at, let's say Google or Amazon or something, right? They love to boast that they're doing this kind of stuff. So it can enhance their brand because they're doing this. You think I'm interpreting that properly?
Yeah, you might be. I'm unsure how brand enhancement really fits with important benefits of robots process automation, just because I'm not seeing if it is, I'm doing robotic process automation and that statement enhances your brand, or if it's using robotic process automation to do brand enhancement stuff.
I've automated going through and liking and even commenting on stuff on Facebook, whatever, right?
Exactly. Which to me, again, would be much better done with an actual real tool that was programmed for doing those types of things, because robotic process automation, from how I've seen it and from what I've heard from Tank and what I understand about it myself, is that most of it is, it's able to do hard-coded human tasks. So in most cases, it's a simple recording of a human doing an action and then the computer replicating that action. But in no aspects is it really able to make a decision.
Well,
right, it can do it, or ifs and ors and all that, but it can't make a business decision that human would normally do, like determine if a post is like-worthy or not.
I think some of the problems is robotic process automation is used for such a variety of processes that it's doing. Because remember before we were going through that book, and it had the structured data versus unstructured data, and AI was on we're on the what's it called? Assisted RPA,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And then there was the, you needed to have very clear, clean data, very structured. Then there was the other end of the spectrum, which was where AutoHotkey doesn't really play almost at all. But we know from doing it with, what's his name? We did that neural network with AutoHotkey, right? You can kind of sort of do some stuff. But I still agree with everything you're saying, Jackie. It's not the right tool for doing like data science level things, right? For doing AI. Yet I think some of them throw it in there. So that's my hesitation of like, some people still say that's RPA. And to me, it's not. You know what it is, Jackie, to me? Some of the tools like Automation Anywhere and Blue Prism, they have AI aspects, which to me is really a data science thing. And I will bet they are using RPA to apply the AI, but I wouldn't really consider that AI to be, because it's not a process. I guess that's what it breaks down to, right? They're using AI to make a decision to apply to that process. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But the thing for me, and that's just from my firsthand experience, is from seeing real life these tools that we're talking about that call themselves RPA tools,
Yeah.
which is why I'm comparing this directly to those and not to any other type of automation where a programmer has sat down and actually automated something, where these RPAs, like we talked with Tank, who's actually made these, are these recorded actions, and a human might go in and make them more robust and stuff like that. But in most cases, it is, what does the human do, and replicating it. And they say they have AI, and most people would put that up on a pedestal that's too high for it to really fit, because it's doing business logic maybe, but it's not per se taking outside of scope decisions. It still seemed, from all that I've seen, to be some kind of decision trees and stuff like that, where all of it is predetermined. If you see enough of this word, do that. It's not like it's going over social posts, and after looking at 3,000 of them, it determines, oh, this word is often in them, and therefore I will start acting, which is AI, or that's at least deep learning. It might not be general AI or anything like that, but it's,
no, I'd say
and that's not what I am seeing these tools are doing. They might have some smart ways of taking one or the other. So that is just an if else, right? And if the if else tree gets large enough, it seems as if it can take.
For an example, let's talk about doctors, right? And doctors can seem highly intelligent, knowledgeable, but really you can usually break it down to just basically asking yes/no questions, right? To come to a diagnosis on something. Does it have this or this or this or that, right? And it's simple questions can lead to a very complex thing. Yet it truly feels like, wow, they're amazing, and they are. But I get your point. Cool. All right. Well, hopefully people found that a little interesting. If you haven't, and what I think the takeaways from this are, if you don't have any, if your company isn't doing RPA at all, you might want to bring up some of the, especially the things at the top here. The reducing the manual errors, faster service, improved data quality. Those are definitely right. Those are low-hanging fruit to be bringing up.
Yeah, and as you said yourself, we're doing some at my company, and some of the things that pull the veil away or whatever is that, they just have a remote server where the bot has complete work room, so nobody is interrupting it.
Yeah.
So it has its very own workstation. So just as if you weren't actually interacting with your own workstation, that's the environment that is working. Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. So if you had that, you
Right.
could also reduce a little bit on some of the things that you
Sure.
would have to take into consideration. And then there's this, that in most cases, and because I've sat with a few of them for hours, and that's not the same as for everyone, but it is mostly recorded actions that are happening. And sure enough, if someone goes into the same program and grabs the same value every day and puts it into something, that's automatable, and it's worth automating. And if you have 10 people doing it in all kinds of places, sure enough, those are all worth automating. And that's where RPA is moving right now. And AutoHotkey can lift that task just as well as these RPA tools can. What my company weighted high on why we're using something that's not just open source like AutoHotkey is because it's a different company doing it, and we have a contract with them, and they will document everything, and they will have the responsibility of it actually working and reporting and all of those different aspects of it. But if I were to do most of those that I've seen, they could have been done in AutoHotkey. But I wouldn't want to be the one sitting there and making manuals for it and saying, and it's doing this, that is why, because of this, and actually typing out the code in human readable contract wording, and so on. And there's some logging that they do that would take extra time to write into your script. But that's just because they're using a specific tool.
Yeah.
Every time people put in an action on the back end, it's just putting in a small log action as well. There's nothing fancy in them doing it. It's just because they've built a tool that does it.
I was laughing a bit earlier because when you were talking about you don't want to be the one documenting all this, doing all this stuff, right? And it dawned on me, it's kind of funny. Anybody who's naturally fallen into like using AutoHotkey, right? Your nature of your psyche, your mindset, you want to get stuff done and not be doing all this other crap that for you it doesn't matter. It's you just want to solve your problem. But yeah, clearly for when you're doing it for someone else, they need to have all that stuff.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of pulled back on. But why ain't we just doing it that way? I could do that just as easily. And look here, I can write that quickly, because I'm not gonna be writing a manual. I'm not gonna be putting in all of that logging, and I don't want to be doing that. But if that was one of the points you wanted to do, having someone in a smaller company that could do it and just putting it into your code as soon as you had the function or the method or the class to actually do it, it was just a matter of keep doing that. Every time it send a mouse event, instead of just using AutoHotkey's built-in mouse event, write a mouse event function that will log what's being clicked and where it's being clicked, and then doing the mouse action and then return back into the flow of your code. And do that every time. So it becomes every time you write mouse click left, whatever. Right.
What would you, this is getting a little off topic, but it's an interesting idea. So would you capture like the window title? What else would you throw in with that?
Depending on, sure enough, the way you're doing your actions. If you're doing it really plain, I would do kind of like the old script writer that came, where you had
Yep.
the Windows title, you had some sleep amounts that was automatically in there that could be controlled, and you would have the coordinates, and you would maybe use a coordinates mode that made sense. So instead of having it being general, having it being client wise, or always having it general, depending on the environment. But if you had an environment totally for yourself and have a bot that when it opened, let's say it opened Excel, just to use something as an example, the first thing it would do would be to move it and resize it to the exact location that you always want to have it in. Then you could use absolute coordinates because it will always be there. But as AutoHotkey has lots of functionality to make sure that that Windows is the active window, you could just as well always use client coordinates so that you would never click in the wrong place in the window. So logging the window, maybe if, I don't know, the last active window, the prior key, or some of these other functionality that's in there might be interesting to keep a log of. But again, it does depend on what you want the log to be able to tell you afterwards, right?
Yeah, and obviously how important it is, and then as well as how many computers or bots or whatever you want to call them are going to be running this, on how many instances. Because all this stuff, the text stuff is tiny, right? It's very small, the log files. However, if you're truly running, it on a lot of times, you might care that you're storing too much stuff at some point, right? But yeah, very cool.
Yeah, that is.
Awesome, man. Well, hopefully that was fun for everyone.
Yeah, let's hope.
Talk to you soon, Jackie. Take care.
Yeah, bye, Joe.